What if history isn't just forgotten, but erased? Across the world lie whispers of places that never made it into the textbooks. Cities swallowed by earth, machines built before their time, voices echoing from the sea, and symbols that burn without fire. These aren't tales of fantasy, but chilling historical mysteries lost to time. In this documentary, we uncover 5 stories too strange to be dismissed, secrets buried, sealed, or hidden in plain sight. Welcome to Unsolved Archives, where we delve into the hidden, the mysterious, and the unanswered. Share your thoughts in the comments. Your insight could be the key to unlocking the truth. The forgotten Citadel of Viremont. In the southern shadows of the Pyrenees, hidden between mist-draped ridges and valleys so steep they seemed untouched by time, rumors have circulated for generations. Whispered by shepherds and passed on in wine-soaked taverns, they tell of a city swallowed by the earth, a place known as Viremont. No modern map marks its location. No textbook records its history. And yet, those who claim to have seen the ruins swear by its haunting presence. The story begins in 1882, when French cartographer Jules Renard embarked on a private expedition across the Pyrenees to chart previously unmapped terrain. Renard was known for his obsession with ancient geography and had become increasingly interested in local folklore that spoke of a lost city once ruled by scholars who listened to the stars. In a worn leather-bound journal found decades after his disappearance, Renard described his travels, noting strange stone fragments that did not match the local geology. "Black as coal, yet cold to the touch," he wrote, "as though carved by hands that feared the sun." In one entry dated October 12, 1882, he detailed finding what he believed to be the upper arch of a buried structure. Strange copper discs, etched with concentric circles and lunar markings, were scattered nearby. The final page of the journal ends abruptly with only one line: "They watch when the stars are wrong." Renard was never seen again. Over a century later, in 1997, a violent landslide occurred near the same region, revealing a portion of the mountainside that had been previously inaccessible. A group of amateur hikers stumbled across exposed ruins, massive obsidian-colored stones forming what appeared to be a broken perimeter wall. Embedded within the ground was a metallic device partially intact, resembling a sundial, but its carvings showed future celestial alignments, planetary patterns set to occur in 3124 AD. Word spread quickly, and soon a mixed team of archaeologists, physicists, and historians was sent to investigate. They called themselves Project Viremont. Lead archaeologist Dr. Clara Dumont documented what she referred to as the most perplexing sight in modern European history. The obsidian structures did not match any known construction style. The copper discs Renard mentioned were still present, some stacked neatly in a way that suggested deliberate arrangement. But it was the mechanism found near the center of the ruins that left everyone speechless. At first glance, it appeared to be a clock. It had an array of arms, gears, and an interface that aligned with stellar charts. But unlike any timekeeping device previously discovered, this one seemed to operate independently of solar movement. Even more curiously, when certain discs were inserted into its base, the arms began to shift and point to constellations that no longer existed in their current forms, as if mapping the sky not just across distance, but across time. Clara recorded in her field notes that one evening, while working late near the mechanism, she heard a low hum resonate through the stones, almost like a frequency tuning into something beyond human hearing. The sound only lasted for a few seconds but caused her to suffer temporary disorientation and vivid hallucinations. Visions of a city bathed in violet light, people walking silently, and massive pillars that seemed to move on their own. She wasn't the only one. Over the next 6 months, 3 members of the team reported strange dreams after extended time on site. One described seeing glass trees growing in the city, each filled with moving lights like insects. Another claimed to have heard a whispering voice speaking in a language no one could identify. All of them reported losing track of time, often believing only minutes had passed when hours had gone by. As international interest in the site grew, so did pressure from governments and private organizations to control the excavation. But before any official handover could occur, the site experienced another disaster. In April 1998, an earthquake measuring 4.7 on the Richter scale struck the region, unusual for that part of France. The quake caused the newly exposed section to collapse inward, sealing the ruins once again beneath thousands of tons of rock. Clara Dumont and her team barely escaped. Her final statement to the press was short and cryptic: Viremont chose to be hidden. And now, it is again. In the years since, no further expeditions have been allowed. The French government quietly designated the area as a restricted conservation zone due to geological instability, and all media coverage was redirected or dismissed. But some believe Project Viremont was never truly disbanded, that Clara continued her work in secret, and that other sites connected to the same ancient civilization may exist. A single photograph remains from the original excavation, leaked anonymously online. It shows the timekeeping mechanism partially unearthed, glowing faintly under the moonlight. Several astrophysicists who examined the image claim the device's alignment matches the starfield as it will appear on March 27, 3124, a date still nearly 11 centuries away. What civilization could have predicted the movement of stars with such precision? What happened to Viremont? Did its inhabitants flee, perish, or escape in ways we cannot yet understand? Perhaps some cities don't vanish because of time or war. Perhaps they vanish because they were never meant to stay. The Clockmaker's Map. In the heart of Munich's old quarter, buried beneath layers of modern construction and cobbled alleys, there once stood a forgotten workshop. The building itself was demolished in 1819, but for centuries prior, it was home to one of the city's most enigmatic craftsmen, Adalric Weskler, a 17th-century horologist whose clocks were said to whisper the hours, and whose inventions baffled even the most brilliant minds of his time. Weskler's story is a strange one. Born in 1621 to a modest family of locksmiths, he showed an early fascination not only with mechanical timekeeping but with geography and celestial mapping. By his 20s, he had crafted clocks that tracked not only hours and minutes but tides, planetary positions, and even lunar eclipses. He claimed that time is a shadow cast by the future, a phrase often repeated by those who studied his later works. Then, in the winter of 1672, he vanished without a trace. Before his disappearance, Weskler had begun telling close friends and confidants of a map he had acquired, or built, one that showed the world as it would be, not as it was. He described it as a globe of shifting truths, a mechanism of brass and crystal that spun and clicked with the precision of a living organism. Most dismissed it as the ramblings of a man consumed by his own brilliance. But one letter, recovered from the archive of a local noble, tells a different story. The letter, dated December 3, 1672, is addressed to a merchant named Albrecht Thorn. It reads, "The map sings now, Albrecht. It shows rivers that do not yet flow and towers where no cities yet stand. It mocks me with futures I cannot touch. I must leave. If it calls to you, burn this letter." The workshop was sealed shortly after Weskler's disappearance, its contents boxed and locked in a municipal archive for over 300 years. That might have been the end of the tale, if not for a freak fire in 1993 that damaged the Munich Records office. During restoration efforts, workers stumbled upon a concealed chamber behind a false wall, a room filled with gears, drawings, and what appeared to be a large, spherical clock, half submerged in dust. The object, dubbed the Weskler sphere, was unlike anything known to horology. It stood 6 feet tall, composed of concentric rings that rotated on their own axis when exposed to moonlight. Etched into the outermost ring were markings in no known language. On the inner rings, names of continents and oceans, some real, some unfamiliar, glowed faintly when touched. Even more shocking was that the sphere contained coordinates, locations accompanied by dates ranging from the 18th century to the distant 25th. One of the earliest dates corresponded with the founding of New Amsterdam, now known as New York City. Another pointed to a glacier melt in Greenland that had not occurred until 2012. A third, still unexplained, is set to occur in 2046 near the coast of Madagascar and is simply labeled, "The Opening." When researchers attempted to date the components of the globe, they were stunned. The metals used to construct the sphere included alloys not synthesized until the 20th century. Yet, Weskler's disappearance occurred more than 300 years before such materials existed. Was it a hoax? A plant by a modern artisan? Experts remain divided. One compelling piece of evidence suggests otherwise. Inside the base of the sphere was a sealed drawer containing hand-drawn maps and schematics matching Wexler's documented handwriting. One map showed the outline of a city that would not be founded until the 19th century, Singapore, with street names accurate to modern layouts. The sphere has since been relocated to a private facility under the Bavarian Science Council. Public access is prohibited. However, a blurry photo leaked online shows the globe glowing with a deep indigo hue under artificial light. The rings appear to be turning, slowly aligning toward something, an event, perhaps, or a moment in time still to come. In 2002, a woman claiming to be a descendant of Wexler attempted to retrieve the globe, stating in a public forum that the device was not merely a map but a directional engine. According to her, Wexler was not driven mad by the knowledge of the future, he followed it. She disappeared days later. Local legend holds that if you stand on the spot where the old workshop once stood at precisely 3:17 a.m. on the winter solstice, you'll hear faint ticking in the wind. Some say it sounds like a clock. Others say it sounds like breathing. Wexler once wrote, "Time is not a line, but a spiral folded in on itself. If you find the center, you'll never be lost again." Whether he found it or not remains unknown. But the globe continues to turn. The Bay of Whispers. Off the ragged coast of Newfoundland lies a near-perfect circle of water, surrounded by jagged cliffs and dense pine forests. On official maps, it's labeled simply as Hollow Bay, but to the local fishing communities that dot the shoreline, it's always been known as the Bay of Whispers. The name isn't poetic, it's literal. Visitors report hearing faint, unintelligible murmurs drifting across the water, even on windless days. No birds nest there. No boats dock there willingly. And for nearly 100 years, the stories surrounding the bay have only grown more chilling. The earliest written account dates back to 1741, in the journal of a French trapper named Émile Fournier. He describes setting camp near the bay's rim and waking to the sound of voices rising from the water. Not cries or screams, but overlapping whispers in languages he could not place. It was as though 100 ghosts spoke through glass, he wrote. He fled the area, convinced he had stumbled into cursed land. But the most infamous event tied to the bay occurred in 1907, when the British vessel HMS Catternick vanished during a scientific expedition. The ship, crewed by 31 men and outfitted for oceanographic study, had set sail from St. John's to conduct seabed mapping. They were scheduled to rendezvous near Hollow Bay after investigating reports of unusual magnetic activity in the area. Radio contact ceased 5 miles from the shore. A week later, the only thing found was a single lifeboat, gently bobbing just inside the bay's boundary. The boat was empty except for a carved message scorched into its wooden floorboards. The message read, "Do not seek the mouth." Since then, the bay has been studied several times, cautiously and always from a distance. Marine biologists, geologists, and even military divers have reported anomalies. One sonar scan returned impossible topography, suggesting that the seabed below Hollow Bay shifts in real time. Another expedition's instruments registered an audio bloom, a sudden burst of underwater sound at an ultrasonic frequency, lasting 9.4 seconds. The bloom repeated every 71 hours, exactly. A former U.S. Navy diver who participated in a classified survey in 1981 later came forward in a heavily redacted memoir. He described descending into the bay in a submersible and witnessing what he believed to be a circular structure embedded deep beneath the silt. The walls of the structure pulsed with light. The interior pressure became unstable, forcing an emergency ascent. When the team surfaced, all of their timepieces, analog and digital, had stopped at precisely 3:33 a.m. The diver retired from service that same year, citing severe tinnitus and recurring dreams of being under a sky with no stars. Most haunting of all are the local legends passed down in oral tradition. The Mi'kmaq people, who have lived near the region for centuries, tell of a time, before the people, when a great stone mouth opened beneath the waves and sang to the earth. According to the tale, The mouth was sealed by the stars themselves after it swallowed a man who tried to ask it the name of God. The whispers, they say, are what remains, fragments of thought still drifting up from the ancient silence. In recent decades, satellite imagery has failed to consistently photograph Hollow Bay. On some maps, it appears as expected, a calm blue circle surrounded by cliffs. On others, it is blank, blurred, or pixelated. When questioned, officials blame data stitching errors or cloud interference. But some amateur cartographers have compiled a series of these anomalies into an online archive. One striking pattern emerges. The bay only appears clearly visible on maps dated within a narrow 3-day window each year, the same dates the sonar bloom occurs. In 2016, a research drone equipped with infrared sensors was sent to survey the area. Within moments of crossing into the bay's airspace, its sensors went dark. The drone returned 2 hours later, floating in the water near the same spot the Catanix lifeboat was found. Its flight logs were corrupted, but a single frame of recovered video showed something unexplainable. Dozens of ripples forming in concentric circles, though the water was undisturbed by wind or rain. A voice, faint and layered, can be heard repeating a single phrase, "You are too early." Who or what was speaking? What lies at the bottom of Hollow Bay? And why does the location resist not only exploration, but memory? One of the only residents willing to speak on record, an elderly fisherman named Maurice Devlin, gave a cryptic warning to a documentary crew in 2009. "It's not the whispers you need to be afraid of," he said. "It's the silence that follows." As of today, Hollow Bay remains closed to public exploration. The area is designated as a protected marine habitat, though no known species have ever been catalogued within its bounds. The water is perfectly clear, but its depths remain unreadable. Some believe it's not a bay at all, but the rim of something far older. A listening device from before human time. Or worse, a place that listens back. The fire scripts of Aleba. In the sun-scorched highlands of Sudan, far from the trade routes and political borders that define modern maps, there lies a place the locals call Wadi Aleba, a shallow valley of blackened stone, eternally dry and eerily silent. No birds sing there. No insects buzz. Not even the wind seems willing to pass through. The ground is littered with ash-brittle ruins, half-buried structures that seem to have melted and fused into the desert itself. The earliest colonial mention of Aleba comes from 1849, when a small British expedition led by anthropologist Sir Nathaniel Reeve ventured into the area in search of Nubian relics. In his personal field notes, later retrieved from a London museum archive, Reeve wrote, "We have found a place spoken of only in riddles by the local tribes, a valley where fire once rained from the sky. The terrain looks as if struck by lightning and flame, yet no vegetation ever dares return. And in the center, we found them, the fire scripts." The fire scripts were what Reeve called a series of strange metallic scrolls discovered inside a collapsed chamber, not written on parchment or stone, but on sheets of an unknown alloy. These scrolls, thin as foil yet resilient to heat and corrosion, bore glowing red symbols that shimmered faintly in the dark, as if smoldering from within. Despite being removed from their resting place, the glyphs remained warm to the touch. Only a few scrolls were recovered before something inexplicable occurred. Members of the team began falling ill. One by one, they suffered from migraines, fevers, and hallucinations. Reeve's assistant, Thomas Albridge, reportedly attempted to destroy one of the scrolls by throwing it into a campfire. According to surviving accounts, the fire turned blue and exploded outward with a gust of scorching air, leaving Albridge burned and raving mad. He survived, but never spoke again. Within 6 weeks, 5 members of the party were dead. Reeve himself died in transit back to Khartoum, reportedly from a fever of the brain. The scrolls were locked in crates and forgotten in storage for over a century, until their rediscovery in 1971 during a cataloging project at the British Museum. The contents of the scrolls were initially classified, but when a small team of linguists was permitted to study them, they reported something beyond comprehension. The symbols on the scrolls seemed to change when observed directly. A phrase recorded one day would appear completely different the next, and photographic records failed to capture their appearance. as if the writing resisted being fixed in time. Dr. Layla Osman, one of the lead researchers, described an experiment in which a scroll was held near an open flame. As the flame grew higher, the glyphs brightened, and for the briefest moment, a voice was heard, not spoken aloud but in the minds of everyone present. "We are what burns when time forgets." Several scholars resigned immediately after the incident. Dr. Osman continued her study for another year before disappearing during a private trip back to Sudan. She was last seen boarding a small bush plane with a satchel containing one of the scrolls, a piece the museum hadn't even realized was missing until years later. But perhaps more disturbing than the scrolls themselves is what archaeologists later uncovered in Wadi Aleba in 1995. Using ground-penetrating radar, a new team, mostly local researchers from Khartoum University, discovered a vast substructure beneath the valley floor. It was not a tomb. It was a chambered, radial complex, like spokes radiating from a central hub. Much of it was fused with the rock, as though exposed to temperatures exceeding those of a volcanic eruption. One chamber, partially excavated before the dig was abruptly shut down, was found to contain skeletal remains, humanoid, but elongated and twisted. Nearby, a pedestal bearing a concave depression was discovered. Residue analysis of the pedestal's surface showed traces of the same metal alloy found in the scrolls, suggesting they once rested upon it, like offerings or control keys. Sudan's government, under pressure from unknown international partners, soon declared the site off-limits, citing environmental hazards. But that didn't stop local stories from spreading. Among the nearby nomadic tribes, there exists an ancient tale of the Aleba, a people who spoke in flame and read the sky by fire. According to legend, they angered the gods by trying to bring fire into the soul of the earth. As punishment, their city was turned to glass and ash. But the writings, the scripts, survived. What is most terrifying is the growing speculation among fringe historians and physicists that the fire scripts might not be messages at all, but instructions, or even code. One theorist, Dr. Marion Kohler, has hypothesized that the scrolls function as a kind of thermal memory system, that heat activates them, not simply as writing, but as a mechanism, a device. In a private interview shortly before disappearing herself in 2018, Kohler said, "What if the fire wasn't punishment? What if it was fuel? What if the scripts weren't meant to be read, but run?" Today, the scrolls that remain are kept in a deep storage vault beneath the British Museum. Publicly, they are labeled as Proto-Nubian ceremonial artifacts, but among those who have studied them, they go by another name, the memory of fire. And they are not silent. Not entirely. One of the scrolls, the one that has not been touched by flame in over a century, began glowing again in 2020. No one knows why. But the valley remembers. The Phantom Bells of Eloria. Along the crumbling cliffs of the Black Sea, beyond the modern borders of Romania and Bulgaria, there once stood a kingdom now erased from nearly all recorded history, Eloria. It is absent from official maps, unnamed in most ancient texts, and yet its name lingers in the oldest oral tales of shepherds, sailors, and exiled monks. The only remnants of its existence lie in a series of weathered monastic ledgers, an incomplete fresco, and the legend of a sound that should no longer be heard, the bells of Eloria. The story begins with the ruins of a monastery perched on the cliffs of Cape Vardosh, its broken arches still reaching toward the sky like pleading hands. Archaeologists estimate the original structure was built in the late 5th century, but its style is inconsistent with regional architecture of that period. The monastery was known as St. Veron's Watch, a name found in the marginalia of a Byzantine naval chart from 812 AD. Strangely, no naval outposts were ever stationed nearby, and the chart itself was marked with an ominous note, "The bells toll beyond prayer." What captured the attention of historians, however, was not the monastery's architecture, but its bell tower. Though long since destroyed by time and erosion, accounts dating back to the 1400s describe a towering spire of silver-veined stone housing a single bronze bell that rang each night precisely at midnight. The bell was said to toll 13 times, each tone more distant and hollow than the last, even when no monk or priest was present. Pilgrims claimed it could be heard even during the fiercest storms. Some even claimed the sound didn't come from above, but from beneath the sea. When the Ottomans advanced through the region in the 16th century, they reportedly sent troops to raise Eloria. But official military logs curiously omit any mention of the campaign. Instead, an anonymous Ottoman soldier's diary surfaced in the 1700s, containing an unsettling account. The tower stood unguarded. We climbed and found no bell, only dust. But the sound, oh God, the sound, it rang around us, inside us. One man screamed and fell. The commander ordered us to burn the structure. But even as it burned, the sound continued. We fled. The smoke whispered names none of us knew. By the 1800s, the region had been entirely abandoned. The monastery crumbled to ruin, and Eloria, as a recognized territory, ceased to appear in any form of administration. Yet, for the next 2 centuries, fishermen off the coast continued to report hearing faint bells at midnight, always 13 chimes, always in still air, never traced to a source. In 1984, a team of Bulgarian acoustic researchers decided to investigate the phenomenon. Using directional microphones and hydrophones, they monitored the coastline for 30 nights. On the 17th night, at exactly 12 a.m., the chimes came. The equipment recorded a precise frequency, 311 Hz, decreasing by 11 Hz with each successive toll, until the final chime was almost imperceptible to human ears. But when analyzed, the waveform revealed something strange. Each bell tone contained a secondary frequency embedded within it, a modulating pattern resembling ancient liturgical chant. The team cross-referenced the audio with known Gregorian and Byzantine hymns but found no match. One member, Dr. Anton Lukhanov, believed the embedded chant was not music but language. A forgotten tongue, perhaps. He devoted the next 3 years to studying the signal before suffering a sudden mental breakdown in 1987. He died under psychiatric care, having written a single phrase over and over in his notebook. If it falls silent, time will forget us. This statement led scholars to re-examine what the bell might have been. Some proposed it was a timekeeping device of non-human origin. Others believed it to be a cultural relic tied to ritualistic memory, an artifact meant to preserve a people's existence through resonance. But the most compelling theory came from linguistic anthropologist Dr. Mirela Costescu, who proposed that Eloria had not merely disappeared, it had been erased by a process tied to the bell's sound. She theorized that the bell functioned as a memory anchor, keeping the identity of Eloria tethered to the collective consciousness. When the bell tolled, it reminded the world, and the world remembered. But should the bell ever fall silent, the memory of the place, the people, even the history itself would begin to unravel and vanish from all minds. In 1999, satellite imaging revealed a new anomaly. A deep fissure near Cape Vardosh had widened, revealing a submerged cavity filled with irregular stone shapes. Divers dispatched to investigate claimed to have seen what looked like a domed structure far below, covered in coral and thyme. One diver swam too close to the structure and surfaced in a panic, bleeding from the ears. He repeated a phrase over and over before falling unconscious. It never stopped ringing. Not down there. The team withdrew, and the site was once again restricted. But in 2006, a low-quality video began circulating online, filmed by a lone hiker exploring the ruins of St. Veron's Watch. The footage is grainy, shaky. At one point, the camera pans across the cliffs at night. In the distance, across the dark water, a deep, metallic chime echoes through the air. 12 seconds pass. Then, another. The chimes continue. 13 in total. The final seconds of the video show something impossible. For a brief moment, the ruins appear whole again, the bell tower standing tall under a full moon, before vanishing into shadow. To this day, no one knows who built the bell. No one knows why it tolls. But on certain nights, near the edge of the Black Sea, if you wait long enough, you might still hear it. Faint, persistent, echoing from beneath the waves. 13 times. Every case adds a new layer of mystery, leaving more questions than answers. Which one lingers in your mind, and what's your take on what really happened?